Welcome to Living Truth. I'm Angela James. Together with John Usher, we invite you to dialogues designed to awaken you to truth, enlighten you to who you are, and to invite you to live a reality that you want.
Okay, good morning, everyone. John, we live again. Yay.
We're live again. I'm not surprised this time.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to a combination of conversations that matter and mind matter, which is a lot of the work that John does. So we've decided to call our set Conversations That Matter. John, welcome. Welcome to everybody. Over to you just to say good morning to everyone.
Good morning, everybody. Angela, thank you very much for setting up these sessions. I think the conversations that matter are interesting and important conversations to have.
Yep.
I definitely think it's going to be a foundation for an awakening to truth, expansion of who we are, and living the reality that we want.
Yep. I'm glad that we get to review what you've just said on Facebook, because that needs to be written down. So, yeah. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another version of, or another episode of Conversations That Matter. This morning, John and I are kind of extending from last week, where we explained to you what Conversations That Matter and Matter are all about. We're going to start delving into some of the very interesting, very profound work that John and I are busy co-creating and pulling together. And I think it's twisting us inside, outside, upside, downside, and really certainly stretching me. And I know it's stretching you. I can't speak for you, but I know just in the engagements that we've had over the last couple of days, that we truly are being stretched into living truth. So we're not going to tell you too much about living truth yet, because it's still in its formation stages and creation stages. But certainly the essence of where we start, where the whole journey for me and for, again, I can't speak for you, John, but certainly for me, started with the whole question of who am I? What is that I am? And how do we unpack and unbundle that? And I think for a lot of people coming through the last 2 years, particularly with COVID, the impact of social distancing, the lack of connection with and with people has for many brought up that question. So, yeah, that's where the journey started for me. How about you?
Spot on. It's exactly, obviously, before COVID started, many years ago, having a pandemic of my own and just wanting to discover, who I am and how to manage the results that I was getting. So it always reverted back to the identity and who I was.
Yeah. I think for me, if I have to really kind of pinpoint where it all started, there were two things, or two kind of highlights for me. The one was when I was studying, and there was that identity question of, in studying psychology, the challenge that was put down by one of our lecturers was, you get to choose. One out of the three of you will get to choose. And that choice was whether I was going to be a stretch or a shrink. So there already was that identity issue starting to come up. And then it further extended itself in, and I think one of the other pivotal defining moments for me, where that question was, there were a couple more, but the two really that stand out was when I read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, which deals with and delves into the whole question of purpose and meaning. And that's been something that's really been one of those kind of fundamental threads of my whole life, speaking back to that. So those are the two kind of highlights for me that really stood out. And then it evolved into a whole nother journey and a spiral of all sorts of different upward spirals, sometimes downwards, but a whole identification again with coming back to that question of who am I and why am I really here? What were the moments that really stood out for you, like a couple of the defining moments that really kind of popped this out into your consciousness?
Angela, it's one, and it's not necessarily my moment. It was a moment in somebody else's life that got me thinking, and I was like, okay, there's something more to this. So at the risk of sounding like I'm preaching, I do come from a ministerial background. There was a point when, and I don't want to sound like I'm preaching, but it is the example that got me up and going. So at a stage, Jesus goes back to his hometown, and he's doing miracles and everything else. And the religious fogies of the time in his neighborhood were offended by it. And they were kind of saying to themselves, who's this guy? We watched him grow up. Who's this punk now thinking he can come do signs and wonders here? And they had a little caucus of their own, and then they decided they would go and ask him. If you want to know who somebody is, you go and ask them. And they went to him and they said, "Who are you?" And he answered, and immediately they wanted to kill him. And his answer was, "I am." And straight away they wanted to kill him. And that was puzzling to me. Why would you want to kill somebody because they're answering "I am"? So in effect, his answer is a representation of the name of God, Yahweh. We put in the vowels. I don't want to get too technical about it, but Yahweh is the name of God. And when we are proclaiming, what I realized for myself, when I proclaim "I am," and I have something behind that, I am acknowledging who God in me is and what he is doing for me and the kinds of results that he has for me. So at that stage, I think I was in Standard 8 in those years, Standard 8, grade, what is that? Grade 10?
Grade 10.
And I was saying I'm bad at maths, I was having a tough time I felt like I was in London, always in the fog when I was in the math class. I started changing my I ams, and I started saying, "I'm good at maths. I am a maths boffin," and that inner voice was like, no, really, you're not. Look at your test scores. That will discount that statement. But I persisted with it, and when I matriculated, I had revolutionized my own capability within the maths class, and it started a revolution for me in terms of I realized that what I wanted in this life was rooted and grounded in the identities that I chose.
Yep.
And I've been exploring the identities that I choose or don't choose ever since.
Yep. And that's going to be, when we delve into identity, it's going to be a whole nother conversation that matters. We're going to kind of stick to as much as we can, because this conversation is always just so stimulating to the I am. And I think the thing, as John mentioned some of his background, I think just to get it clear for everybody, that we are not here to stand up on a podium and preach, or at a pulpit and preach. A lot of the work that we do is spiritual in nature, and it doesn't matter which tradition you come from, because truth is truth. And the I am is the I am, no matter what your spiritual path or journey or religion is that when we delve into that I am. So we're not prescribing to anybody that you need to be Christian to participate in these conversations that matter, whether you need to be Jewish, Muslim, whether you need to be agnostic, whether you want to be following the Yoruba traditions. It doesn't matter, because ultimately, certainly in my belief system, everything is about reverting back to source. So I'm going to kick off a little bit of my understanding of the I am, and coming a little bit from a psychological point of view as well. So just the frame of reference, the context we're dealing with our conversations and topics around spirit from a spiritual point of view, from a psychological point of view, education, learning, growth, development, whether you want to go in kind of self-help or whatever any of those labels that people want to put onto it for it to be comfortable for them. Label it how you would like. There is no fixed anything behind it, other than the fact that we have two consciousnesses. Is that a plural? Yeah, consciousnesses coming together to share ideas and to get conversation and dialogue. Sorry, I'm shifting in my seat a little bit. But to get conversation and dialogue going, and to hopefully stimulate for you, John and I. John often uses the acorn. We talk a lot about seeds, to seed some ideas into your own consciousness, to hopefully bring you to a point where it could be a defining moment for you, where you choose to explore who you are. So for me, it's on two levels, and I always write it differently. When I'm in my ego and what spiritually is known as 3D, the dense earth, matter, stodgy, heavy energies, which is referred to very often as the ego, the lower side of the ego states, because the ego can also be healthy. When we're in that drama triangle of the persecutor, the victim, the rescuer, when we're in that heavy, stodgy energy, we come up with I am statements. I am depressed. I am a victim. I am anything. And as John has already alluded to, that starts to become our identity. And that would be, for me, the lower nature side of the I am statements. When I move into the higher states of being, and I move more into my spiritual self, and I connect with, as John has also alluded to, Yahweh, which is the understanding of the I am of God, and I move into my higher self, higher nature of being, where I am compassionate, caring, non-judgmental. I show up with empathy and concern for others. I embrace and embody the higher states of being, of tranquility, of serenity, of peace. And I know you're going to say something to this as well in terms of how you see the two things. When I state and I move into the space of affirmation in my higher self, my I am is with a capital A. Because the capital A, for me, when I see it written down on paper, and I'm very visual, also kinesthetic, when I see that and when I say it with the emphasis on the A of the am, I'm connecting to God. Because it doesn't matter whether I am in my lower nature 3D or higher nature 5D consciousness, the fifth world of peace, whatever labels what people want to put onto it. The fact that I'm still using the words I am is still an affirmation. So I can affirm into being my lower state of being. I am depressed, I am anxious, I am all of those things. Or I can affirm into being, I am peace, I am serenity, I am tranquility. Or I am that I am, whatever the affirmation actually is. So that for me is the distinction between the lower nature I am and the higher nature I am. So John, over to you, because your take on this is also really interesting.
I love that explanation. Thank you, Angela. Yeah, for me, I have just in my own understanding and the way I've evolved it is I talk about a simplistic I am and then a multiplicity of I am. So the simplistic I am really, because we have many I ams, we play many roles in our life. So I am, John the son, I'm John the brother, I'm, John the father, I'm
John the
the
Baptist.
John the Baptist.
I just had to throw that in because
So
I'm
with
not being
all of these,
blasphemous, by the way. Okay.
love it. With all of these roles that we play, there is a clear there's a clear role in the role. There's a clear function within the role. So when I am with my daughter, for example, the role of father is dominant, and that role, that identity of being, I am John the father, is kind of. I am divorced, so obviously my daughter lives with her mother. So when I have her with me, that environment with her in my environment triggers the role of I am John the father.
So if I can add
And
to what you're saying there is it's context, when you're talking singularity, it's context specific. So
context specific.
when you moved into being with your mom, when she was still around, you were then the son. So it became,
John the son.
and that's
Exactly.
the singularity of it, is the fact that you're only the one thing at the one time.
Yeah.
Although you might be in a family situation where you might be a different, but you still, I am
Multiple.
a family member. So it's not about
Correct.
what you mean when you start talking about multiplicity. That's a
Correct.
very different concept. So the singularity is time specific. It is
Yes.
circumstantial,
Context.
try that again, circumstantial specific. Okay, so that's the singularity of your I am. Yeah?
Yeah. And yeah, that's 100% right. And in terms of they're fairly easy to define because of the singularity of that relationship, often based within that context on a relationship. But in saying that, a lot of people don't actually sit down and define those roles. They kind of que sera, sera, whatever will be. And they get the results that they don't necessarily like, but we'll get to that as well.
So can I give you an I am on that one?
Yes.
I am self-centered.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
Oh, I am centered. The multiplicity I ams, I talk about the multiplicity I ams. They are identity statements that are a lot more complicated. They have a bigger impact. And that's in terms of what you were saying, in terms of the higher ego or the spiritual I ams, is when I'm starting to say, I am happy, I am rich, I am kind. Having happiness as a identity is going to affect many roles that I have.
Yeah.
And when I select the identity, it's devoid of the feeling of happiness. I'm in essence choosing the identity, and then the behavior will follow, and then the emotion of that identity will follow. So they are a little bit more complicated. A lot of people put them down to emotion and
No.
will react to them rather than guide and control them. And I think that's what happens when they move into the lower ego
Yeah.
space, is that we're reacting to those things instead of dictating and controlling and deciding where they need to go. I say dictate and control, within boundaries.
I relate to that so much, because what you're talking about for me in terms of the multiplicity, or the almost disciplined elements of the I am, is that, and I do a whole series, as you know, on the gifts of spirit. When you're talking about happiness, we're talking about connect again in that higher energy, higher vibration, connecting to Yahweh. Is we're talking about the gift of spirit of happiness. I might not feel happy, but I may choose happiness as a gift from the God of my understanding. And albeit that it may take a time, and this is why affirmations do work ultimately, it may take time to manifest into the feeling. The more I have to retrain almost my wiring in my brain, and I know that you know a lot about this stuff with neuro-linguistic programming. But the fact that I'm saying the affirmations is in part the rewiring and the reprogramming of my brain, in order for it to start to filter into those lower energies and lower vibrations, like our emotions. Yeah.
And what I love about what you do in terms of choices is that affirmation for me is also like a conscious choice in saying, regardless of what the circumstances are, regardless of the situation or what it is I'm feeling in that situation, I am choosing happiness. Then it allows. So I want to come back to you mentioned in the beginning about the acorn, about the seed. Identity for me is the seed. So if I asked you, where does a tree get its identity from? We're going to say inevitably it comes from the seed. And in terms of a seed getting planted, there is a process of development and evolution in order for us to see the fullness of the tree. So the affirmations is about creating the right environment to nurture that seed, to nurture that identity, so that it has the opportunity to grow into the fullness of that completed seed, whether it's an acorn turning into an oak tree or whatever.
That's really a cool notion, because what it also is saying for us as human beings, not human doings, is that from the moment of conception, our DNA is already wired into ourselves on every level of expression. So in the same way that the seed has its beingness within the seed, so we have our beingness already crafted and created beautifully by the universe within, with God, whatever we want to call that act of creation. Within the act of conception, we already have that intrinsic beingness embedded in our DNA.
Yeah. And as we grow and evolve, it's like we are choosing our identities, but I wonder if it's not just giving an expression to identities that's already part of our DNA in existence. We're just recognizing it and giving articulation to it rather than creating a new one, as it were.
Reclaiming it, because we come from source.
100%.
It's the rebirthing, because this is part of the journey. Any part of the journey of ascension is back to going from matter back to spirit. So it's going from the denser 3D back into more of our soul space, and really recognizing who we've forgotten that we are. I mean, you watch children at play, little children at play, and I mean, I don't know how many people who end up watching this will kind of identify with this as having an imaginary friend. Well, that imaginary friend ain't imaginary at all. It's the recognition of your soul self, recognizing where you've come from. And again, some people might turn around and say that we're being completely blasphemous. Well, it's okay. That's your point of view. We're not trying to convince you at all. We're just sharing what our own consciousness has evolved to be. I don't believe that I'm right or wrong. This is just how I am. This is me in my amness. As we come to share our thinking and ideas and how we the path and journey we've wandered and walked upon. So, kind of going back to that salsa, and what you're saying is that this for me is a reawakening into who we've forgotten who we are. Because I remember distinctly my nephew used to say, and he used to run into the room in extreme distress to my sister, who's no longer with us, and say, Mommy, my brother's being killed. He's killed. And she used to say, what are you talking about? The wagon wheel is on top of him and he's being crushed and you have to come and help him. And he was so incredibly distressed. I don't even know today whether he actually will remember that story. And what my sister wasn't aware of at the time, and again, there's no judgment here, was that he was actually seeing his brother from a soul point of view, who actually was lying underneath the wagon and who eventually died in that lifetime. So in the sense of not understanding where he was coming from, and there's no intentions here, there's no forget about what you've said, none of that. We are socialized to forget. Or most of our social structures that we have around us are, and I mean, this can go into a beautiful debate and discussion around how we are almost programmed into an I am that is not who our truth is. And a lot of what we're doing to get back to remembering that, exactly to the point that you're making, is really shedding all of that gumph that we've picked up along the way that has led us into being a false sense of who we are, or a false I am. And a lot of
torment.
Absolutely. The torment that goes with that is real. And a lot of the mental illnesses for me, and I'm not judging this. I have had I've had postnatal depression. I'm sure I've had depression a couple of times, which I just didn't have diagnosed. But that's all part and parcel of the split away from the truth of who we truly are. And so for me, it's about a reawakening, a remembering where we've come from and our connection to Yahweh. So I'm rabbiting on here, but
In my languaging, I think we are born with a lot of the identities, and then we get socialized into more acceptable identities. And sometimes those identities are in conflict. And that's what creates the torment and the toil within us. We have this turbulence because we want to believe one way because it's inherent in us, yet our environment, our society is saying to us another thing. You will get people that operate with two different identities that are actually in confrontation with each other. They are in conflict with us. Just as an example, and no judgment on the smokers, I promise. You can have somebody that has an identity for being healthy, and they believe in health, and they'll do the sports, and they'll eat healthy, and all the rest of it. Yet they will smoke, and they will justify. So what they then do is that immediately creates a conflict. Then what they'll do is they'll justify the smoking, that it will calm them, which is part of their health.
It's the vaping. You can go down that rabbit hole with the vaping as well, and it's a kind of it creates internally. It creates what from a psychological point of view, the big psychological word is cognitive dissonance, because we've got two conflicting ideas within our own self, and that creates stress. And that stress creates anxiety, and that anxiety can lead on to other things. And so, and you're absolutely right. We go into justifying what our point of view about that particular issue is for ourselves, because we need to make sense for it. We need to make sense of it within our own self. It's got nothing to do with anybody else thinks. I am in a space of cognitive dissonance, so I've got to come up with a reason as to why my behavior is out of integrity with who I am.
And part of that integrity, sorry.
No, go. Yeah. I'm just saying we see it all the time.
Yeah, part of that integrity is recognizing when I have identities that are actually in conflict with my higher I ams. So this is coming back to your ego and the spiritual I ams. So for me, authenticity, when you're saying you're authentic, what you are saying to me is I'm making a conscious decision to lay off these lower identities, and I'm choosing to walk in the higher identities. And have, instead of having the anxiety and the turmoil and the frustration and the torment that goes with it, I want to walk in I want to walk in peace. I want to walk in ease. I want to walk in flow. I want to walk in grace. We want to be able to walk in these things, and we do that by recognizing the reality of the I ams that are inherent in us.
And I think I just want to, just a word of caution to everybody. What John and I are talking about here is not proposing this idealistic that you can never aspire to and never get to.
No.
It's not what we're talking about at all.
No.
It's about the awareness of when I'm in my lower nature versus when I'm in my higher nature. It's about the awareness of, here's a habit, because being in the lower nature and the choices that we make to get there is purely a habit. It's about being much more aware of when I'm reverting back to habitual old behavior that no longer fits who I want to be and who I am aspiring to be again. It's about catching ourselves in those moments, and instead of going back into the habitual behavior, it's kind of going, okay, let me hit the pause button, because I can feel it in my body. It's not comfortable. It's not taking me towards where I want to be. So I need to change my state. I need to do something different. And purely in that moment of awareness is where we start to unbundle that old, the programming that we've subjected ourselves to. And again, this is not blaming anybody. People show up the best way they know how with what they have.
Absolutely.
If we knew differently, if I knew what I know now as a mother, there would be many things in being a mom that I would have done differently with bringing up my children. But I'm not going to go back and beat myself to a pulp because I didn't, coulda, shoulda, woulda, didn't. The way that I showed up then was a function of what my awareness of my I am was then. And in that, there's no blame or shame or any form of guilt or justification.
No, it's an awareness, and it is a choice in the moment. And this is, but in saying it is the choice. What I liked about what you're saying in terms of the remembrance is, I think we often arrive in a situation where it will bring us in direct conflict between two of our identities, two I ams, a lower level and a higher level. And what we're doing in that moment is we are making a choice to side with the one that gives us the results that we are looking for.
Or whether perceived results, John, or perceived results.
Or perceived results.
Yeah.
Because there is an inevitability about the identity. If you plant that acorn, you're not going to get a spinach plant. You're not going to get a tomato bush. You are going to get an acorn tree. There's can't say that word today, an inevitability around the identity that will produce the results after its likeness. So when I'm getting into when I arrive in the situation and I'm faced with that choice, I need to be perceived choice, or I'm making a choice for the perceived results that I want. I'm embracing that identity. And, I suppose this is also shaky ground in terms of, I also believe that a lot of our identity is quite fluid. These identities are roles that we can adopt and embrace, or we can let go of. And it's not a long, drawn-out process. It is quite quick. And you say that to a lot of people, and they're just like, no. Your identity is fixed.
It is. I mean, it's as simple, and you and I were talking about this earlier on this morning. It's as simple as I can have an identity that is based in fear, which is going to give me one set of results. I can have another identity which is based in faith, which is going to give me a completely different result. And I know when we go back to the classic iceberg Freudian model, if you want to look at where you need to start reframing your I ams, look at the results that you're achieving in your life and see whether you're happy with those results. Because 100%. That's the symptom. It's not the cause. That's the symptom. The cause is the deeply embedded formation of what your I am is. Because whatever that I am is going to, as you quite rightly say, produce the outcome, produce the result. So if you want to know where to start looking, look at your results. If you're not happy with the results, then it's starting to delve into, so how am I achieving them? Why am I achieving them? Who am I in the process of achieving them? And that's not easy work. In fact, it's not for sissies. It's hard work. And I know in my own experience, the only way through getting from my lower I am into my higher I am, and I mean, we could bring in Maslow, we could bring in all sorts of theories here. I'm talking from a practical point of view, me, myself, I. The only way I know how is through it. There is no other way in having to. It's not like I can put a light switch on one day I'm this I am and the next day I'm that I am. No, it doesn't work like that. The only way through it is actually is shedding all these false, erroneous beliefs that we've picked up along the way, the false identities that we've picked up along the way, in order to be able to get back into living our truth. And I'm loving this. The more we talk about living truth and living our truth, the more I'm loving it.
Yep.
So we're kind of almost out of time for today.
Awesome.
John, any final thoughts?
The big thing for me is about what you had said in terms of, if you want to make the change, look at the results that you're getting, and that'll take you to the root cause. In terms of the identity, the I am, there is I still can't say that word.
Inevitability
of the I am. Your I am is going to create a specific result. So if you want to make the changes, you've got to make the changes at an identity level.
Cool. Yep, and more on that. John and I are going to be bringing you some more on that. Next week, we're going to be focusing on balancing the I am. A really interesting discussion around balance. We will focus quite a lot around the sacred masculine and the divine feminine and how we bring that into balance as part of our identity and part of who we are. That's not gender specific, okay? We're just giving you the heads up already. And it's been quite an interesting journey for me personally, and I think you too, John, as we bring these energies into balance within our own selves as well. So that's what we have planned for you for next week. And the following week, as we were going to do it next week, but we kind of, as we're evolving, so the topics could be changing. The following week, we'll focus a lot more on vision and purpose. Okay, so that's it from us, from our Conversations That Matter. And I hope that this allows you to help or allows you to kind of defrag, like the computer, defrag some of the conversations that matter in your own heads to bringing them into a point that they become conversations that matter, because you do.
Absolutely.
So lots of love and light from me, John.
Lots of love and light from me.
And I know you normally do the peace thing, so you can do that.
Peace.
See, we knew that that's part of our identity. Lots of it was there all the time.
It was there all the time.
Lots of love and light, everybody. And we hope that you not only are finding these discussions enriching, but also that you can join us in embracing laughter as we laugh and enjoy who we are in the process of unveiling and revealing. So God bless everybody. See you next week.
Thank you for tuning into Living Truth. Our goal is to carry a message of purpose and meaning to those who are seeking to be, do, and have a full, joyous, happy, and abundant life. If you know of any dreamers, truth seekers, visionaries, light workers, and wisdom keepers who would benefit from our content, please feel free to share our material with them. We would appreciate your time in leaving us a 5-star review on this channel. And visit us on www.angelajames.co.za and John Asher on www.mindmattermatters.com.